Welcome everyone to Guru Fantasy World. This will be the first official episode. We're going to start off right at the end of the 2021 season, jump right into 2022. And I'm here to tell you the single most important thing for 2022, and that's who's the guy who's going to win your leagues? Who's going to be that game-changing player who can swing your team from the middle to the top? And the answer, I believe, is none other than Giants running back, Saquon Barkley. Now, before I tell you why I believe he's going to be the 2022 league winner, or has a great chance at doing so, let's talk about all the frustration over the past 2 years and what has gotten us to this point. Because I ain't gonna lie to you, there's been a ton of frustration over the past 2 years. He's dealt with multiple injuries. He suffered the ACL tear, obviously, last season after 2 games where he was not efficient as a rusher. So he had that start, and then we kind of came back around on him this year. He was like a late first, early second round pick in redraft, and ended up disappointing again, in part due to these injuries. He started off, was eased in week 1, had a couple good games week 3 and week 4, but then was hurt again by the time he came back after the week 10 bye. The team was already out of it. Daniel Jones was hurt. He was playing with Mike Glennon and Jake Fromm, and it did not go anywhere close, even though the middle of the range of the outcomes. It pretty much ended on the worst possible outcome in 2021 for Saquon Barkley. And people are getting fed up. People are getting fed up with Saquon Barkley. He is no longer being valued as a dynasty RB1 by the dynasty. He's sitting at RB14 on Keep Trade Cut. He's just barely squeaking inside the top 50 players in dynasty on Keep Trade Cut by the crowd over there at 48 overall. And I believe this just makes him a massive, massive buy for the simple fact that you are buying a proven performer. And I won't sugarcoat the rushing efficiency over the past this year and last year. It was awful. 1.8 yards per attempt in 2 games before he tore his ACL in 2020. 3.7 yards per attempt this past year. And there have been grumblings and nitpickings and criticisms that he bounces the ball too much. He's not as confident as he was before. He's not an elite rusher of the football. And even if you lend credence to these criticisms and you subscribe to these theories, bottom line is the dude catches the football. Saquon Barkley puts up receptions. No matter how you feel about his ability as a rusher, he's a guy who's going to produce in fantasy for the simple fact that he catches the ball a shit ton. All right? Even in this year, 13 games, coming off an ACL injury. 6 of those games with Mike Glennon and Jake Fromm at quarterback. He still put up 41 receptions and 57 targets in 13 games. What does that pace out to over 16 games? 50 receptions on the dot, 70 targets on the dot. So we're talking about a running back who's played 4 seasons. 3 of them he's played 13 plus games. In those 3 seasons, every single time his 16-game pace is at least 50 receptions, 70 targets. That's the bare floor for Saquon Barkley receiving. His floor is 50 receptions and 70 targets, even coming off an ACL tear with Daniel Jones, Mike Glennon, and Jake Fromm trio at QB, Jason Garrett as his offensive coordinator, Joe Judge as head coach. That's the floor, is 50 receptions and 70 targets. Even if he continues to be an extremely inefficient rusher at 3.7 yards per carry. Based on the efficiency through 2 years, I would argue it's going to end up somewhere in the middle. Even if it doesn't, even if it's, again, worst case spectrum on the rushing end. He is a 50 he can fall out of bed, throw on a robe, show up at the stadium, and he's still a 50 reception, 70 target running back. I mean, that alone gives him so much value and production potential to absolutely just flip your league on its head, to turn your team from pretender to contender. That can just single-handedly We're talking about the impact of guys like Deebo Samuel made this year, Joe Mixon, guys who just, at the price point you were getting them, who were proven producers in the past. So you look at Mixon, who was a guy who was sabotaged by Andy Dalton and Ryan Finley. Then obviously last year had Joe Burrow go down, suffered his own injury, never came back from. All of that, nobody wanted to touch him this past year, even though we knew A, he was talented, B, he had proven that he was going to get volume no matter what. He was a guy who gets volume. And what did he do this year? He smashed. I mean, even if Saquon Barkley, obviously he had Joe Burrow, even if Saquon Barkley doesn't get a Joe Burrow in 2022, even if he doesn't increase his rushing efficiency, it's likely not going to be as horrible as the situation. And if it is, he's free. He's free at the end of 2022. He's a free agent. He can go wherever he wants. He can spread his wings, and he can go attach himself to an elite quarterback. And we haven't even started into the offseason. Who knows what happens at quarterback? I'm hearing rumblings they could go after Watson, Russell Wilson. There's nothing that can happen between now and the end of the season the end of the offseason, that could hurt Saquon Barkley's value. I mean, they're not going to bring in a significant backup to take touches. That's very unlikely. Their quarterback can't get worse. If anything, only things can happen that can increase his value. They could bring in a head coach that people like, an offensive coordinator that people like, some sort of quarterback upgrade, some sort of offensive line upgrades. Like, his value can only go up. And right now, people are still, bogged down in the injury mindset. And that's what we get back to. What did the league winners look like this year? All of them. They looked like guys who were hurt in the past that nobody wanted nothing to deal with. Joe Mixon. Nobody wanted to touch that. Deebo Samuel. We knew he could produce, but, there were questions about Ayuk and Kittle. But still, we knew he was a guy. The injury concerns pushed it down further. What's he do? He smashes. James Conner, a guy who's handled volume every year of his career, was going for free because of the injury concerns. Leonard Fournette, even to an extent, the injury concerns pushing him down. But what happened? He got volume, he caught a ton of passes, and he smashed. Saquon Barkley fits that mold. He is, as arguably an elite prospect that came into the league at running back we've seen. I mean, it doesn't get any better than Saquon Barkley. And he smashed through 2 years in his career. Suffered an ACL tear in year 3, and then had to deal with all this shit in year 4, okay? He turns 25 in February. I'm not telling you to go out and buy Derrick Henry, who turns 29, whatever it is, 28, 29 this year. You're talking about a guy who's just turning 25. Going into his 5th season, an elite generational running back prospect who's a 50 reception, 70 target guy, no matter what the circumstances. I mean, this is about as easy a bet as you can make right now, guys, to go after Saquon Barkley. Price-wise, I don't know exactly which players and targets I would use, but I just traded Javonte Williams and a 22-2 for Saquon, a 22-1, and a 22 on the years. Let me restart that. I traded Javonte and a 2 for Saquon, a 1 and a 3. Basically, the way I view it, Saquon could be as good as Javonte. He could be as good as basically any back in the league. And someone's going to give you a 2-1 swap in a future draft. That could be highly, highly valuable. I mean, if you want to go out and buy him with just picks, try and buy Barkley with just picks. You could probably buy him with a late first and a throw-in player. This guy could really, really explode. And there are very few players who have the kind of potential that Saquon Barkley has. And I don't think the floor is anywhere near as low as the value would indicate. He's not even valued as an RB1 anymore, guys. This is getting a bit ridiculous, the fact that Saquon Barkley is getting faded this hard. The 2022 offseason hasn't even started yet. I mean, he needs to be higher in the rank. He needs to be bought now. His price is almost certain gonna rise throughout the offseason. And if it doesn't, he's free at the end of the year. He can go wherever he wants. And then you bought low on a generational 3-down running back who could potentially find himself in a good situation in 2023. What happens if he goes somewhere at the end of 2022 and signs with a good quarterback, a good offense. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. I'm getting steamy just thinking about it. Like, this is the time. This is the time to buy Saquon Barkley. There's never been a better time to buy Saquon Barkley. I'm not even like a running back truther in Dynasty. I don't invest in them. I am buying Saquon Barkley at his current, barely inside the top 50 asking price. All over the place, guys. All he's got to do is, one, stay healthy, which it can happen to anybody. Look at Mixon, Deebo, even Connor, Fournette. But I guess not the greatest example with the last two because they got hurt at the end of the season. But look at what they did. Look at what happened to their value spike just by playing a stretch of games healthy. I mean, it seems like a very, very, very simple bet for me to make right now, to bet on Saquon Barkley at an RB14 asking price. I don't think it's any more complicated than that. You should be adding shares. Even if you subscribe to all the criticism against him as a rusher. Inefficient, whatever, bounces too much, whatever. Dude catches the ball. Dude's going to score fantasy points. Dude's going to handle volume. He can break your league. You should go get him today. Thank you guys. Please like and subscribe if you don't mind. I'm trying to maybe grow this thing a little bit. Appreciate it. Have a good one. Go buy Saquon Barkley.